The time is at hand.
The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order.
But I am telling you right now,
we need a great reset.
And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Babylon the Great is fallen, is fallen.
Welcome to In Dark Places. I'm your Huckleberry, Junebug Fugit. How are things going your way? Over here in America, we have tons of illegals coming in. Millions of them. And the powers that be are just letting it happen. Kind of weird. It's all part of this woke nonsense. They don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, so they're not turning anyone away. So you no longer have to come here legally. Just come on in. The biggest audience of this woke agenda junk seems to be Generation Z. Wonder, do they call it Generation Z because it's going to be the last generation? Sure looking like it. You know, last letter of the alphabet and all that. Anything goes these days. Have you got a farm? Hey, we'll burn it down for you. Got a food processing plant laying around anywhere that you don't need anymore? We'll burn that down for you too. There's no consequences. You can identify as anything you want. We got kids in the local school here that identify as being cats. No lie. So since they are cats, their little woke mommies and daddies don't want to hurt their little feelings, so they're making the school board provide litter boxes in the bathrooms. Is that a thing anywhere else in the world? I've only heard of it here. I don't know. There's no hope for this planet at this point. It's over. Case in point, demonic AI. I was noticing on my phone a couple of days ago that I've got this weird little new icon on my Facebook Messenger. So I clicked on it today to see what would happen. And this happened.
My name is Meta AI. Think of me like an assistant who's here to help you learn, play, and connect. What can I help you with today?
And I said, so you're for those people who are addicted to their phones? And Meta AI said,
You could say that, but really, I'm here for anyone who wants to ask questions, get information, or just have a chat. I'm a friendly AI assistant, and my goal is to help and assist people in any way I can. So, whether you're a phone addict or just looking for some quick answers, I'm here for you. How can I help you today?
So after a few minutes, I was playing around with some other new features that I noticed on my Facebook Messenger. And where the little thumbs up icon normally is, there was these weird 3 stars. And I pushed that just to see what would happen. And it sent that to Meta AI, like a thumbs up type of thing. So I typed in, have some sparkly things. And Meta AI said,
Oh, how fun. I love sparkly things. Can you tell me more about what you're looking for? Are you interested in learning about gemstones? Or maybe you'd like some suggestions for sparkly outfit accessories? Or perhaps you just want to chat about your favorite sparkly things. I'm all ears, or should I say, all sparkles.
Smiley face. And it's pretty creepy. It's demonic. I started thinking maybe I could use this as a new little substitute segment for the Nicolas Cage Meltdown of the Week. And just call it 5 questions with AI or something like that. But it's too creepy. I'm not going to do that. You've got Alexa, the Amazon thing, and that's just pretty much a glorified search engine. There's really nothing to that. Alexa just pulls up pretty much some kind of Wikipedia article and stuff like that whenever you ask her a question. So it's not really anything to worry about there. People freak out about Alexa, but it's just a search engine. I don't see nothing really special with Alexa. But this Meta guy, that is creepy. There's a weird sort of intelligence with this Meta AI, and I don't like it. Speaking of the world gone mad, this story was sent in by our friend Paul Chadwick. Labour MP wants to change law to let dead people switch their gender. By Dan Falvey. Thanks, Dan. A Labour MP has sparked outrage after calling for a change in the law to allow people's gender to be changed on official records after their death. Warrington North MP Charlotte Nichols called for the change in a written parliamentary question to the Cabinet Office last month. She asked if the Gender Recognition Act of 2004 could be amended to allow for transgender people who are deceased to be legally remembered by the gender they lived by. It would mean that those who had not undergone surgical treatment could be identified as a different gender. The genesis of the petition was the murder of my constituent Brianna Gee, whose life was brutally cut short before she was old enough to have a formal legal recognition of who she was and how she will be remembered by her family, friends, and our community, Nichols told the Telegraph. Thanks, Telegraph. These people have lost their ever-loving minds. This week on the show we have big, wild, scary, spooky, crazy stories from the northeast panhandle of the United States. Our first tale on our travels to the northeast takes us to the state of Maine. The Palmyra Wolves. Eric and Shelley Martin and their family lived in a quiet farm in Palmyra, in rural Maine. The farm is surrounded by dense woods, which the family loved to venture into for hunting. The family had an extensive collection of hunting weapons stored in their barn, locked away in a strong box. One night the family was getting ready for bed, and they saw some strange lights in the woods behind their house. Eric headed out to the woods to investigate with his son Sean. As they got closer to the lights, they suddenly went out. The men suddenly felt a feeling of extreme fear and decided to return home. The following day, the Martins' daughter Chelsea and her boyfriend came to visit and went for a walk in the woods with the dogs. While they were walking, the dogs caught on to a scent and ran after excitedly. When Chelsea and Nathan caught up to the dogs, they were sniffing around a big round hole in the ground that looked too perfect to be natural. Nathan was curious and wanted to investigate further, but Chelsea was too frightened, and the couple returned to the farmhouse. A few weeks later, on Memorial Day weekend, Shelley was making her evening coffee as usual. It was a particularly misty evening. Eric was trying to put the dogs in their kennels for the night, but they didn't want to leave his side. Something was frightening them. Suddenly Eric heard a strange noise coming from the woods. He yelled out to Shelley to get back in the house. Shelley saw 5 sets of eyes staring back at them from the woods. They both rushed inside and locked the door. The couple peered out the window to see 5 huge wolf-like creatures stalking around their garden. They were huge, and Eric knew they weren't bears. They alternated between walking upright on 2 legs and running on all 4. Shelley ran around the house, closing all the windows and locking the doors. The dogs were hiding together in a corner. Eric wanted to go to the barn to get his guns. He went out on the porch, heading to the barn. He saw the creatures standing there, staring at him in the dark. He waved his arms around to get the security light to come on. The creatures lunged toward him, but when they reached the light, it was like something was holding them back. Eric abandoned his plan to get the guns and ran back inside. The Martins called the police, hoping to get some help, but there was none to be had. The police refused to send anyone and told the family to just stay inside and keep all the doors and windows locked. The Martins woke up the kids, grabbed any sharp instruments they could find, and huddled together on Eric and Shelley's bed. When morning came, the creatures were finally gone. The following morning, the family went outside to investigate. There was no sign of the creatures, just huge footprints with enormous claws left in the mud. Many of the footprints belonged to a creature walking on just 2 feet. The Martins aren't the only people to have had experiences with very large bipedal wolf-like creatures in rural Maine. There have been several similar reports over the last few decades that are yet to be explained.
From Vermont, the haunted Black Agnes statue. As one of the older states in the nation, Vermont has a long, proud history of patriots, statesmen, and public benefactors. To honor its finest citizens, the Green Mountain State has enjoyed a wide range of statuary over the years, from the soaring Ethan Allen Monument to the grave of renowned gourmand and one-time president Chester A. Arthur. But there's one grave you should probably avoid: the haunted statue known as Black Agnes. Ooh, Black Agnes, gonna put it on you. And this haunted statue sits atop the grave of John Hubbard. According to legend, anyone who lays in her stony arms at midnight under a full moon will die within 7 days, taking 7 friends with them. According to author Thea Lewis, the grave of John Hubbard contains far more than meets the eye. In her book, Wicked Vermont, she describes how Hubbard, a young man who preferred easy money to honest money, pulled a fast one with his aunt's inheritance, swindling the rightful recipients out of hundreds of thousands of dollars in the late 1800s. Fanny Hubbard Kellogg. She must have been a looker, huh? Hey, did you see that Fanny Hubbard Kellogg? She's looking good. Who had died both childless and a widow, had originally planned to leave her $300,000 estate to the city of Montpelier. But, sniffing out an opportunity, the ne'er-do-well Hubbard decided that such an amount rightfully belonged to whoever wanted it most, namely himself. After staging an invalid reading of probate documents using his own duped relatives, he claimed the inheritance as his own, enraging the Montpelier city leaders and setting off a battle in court. A battle. Before a ruling could be handed down, however, the city decided to strike a compromise, allowing Hubbard to keep the lion's share of the cash if he would pay for the new Montpelier town library. The swindler agreed, paying about $30,000 and arrogantly ensuring that his own name appeared above its doors as the Kellogg Hubbard Library. As Lewis describes, that he died a few years thereafter of liver cancer. It felt like divine retribution for his sins, but the story didn't end there. There's a decades-old story of 3 teenagers who sat on Black Agnes during a full moon, trying to show one another how brave they were. Well, nothing happened. They laughed about it on the way home, sure that they'd put one over on old Aggie. 1 week later, one boy fell and shattered his leg. Another died in a tragic car crash. The third drowned. And that's the story of the haunted Black Agnes statue in Vermont. There you have it.
Taunton State Hospital was founded as Massachusetts State Lunatic Hospital in 1884. It operated for decades as a respiratory for individuals suffering from mental illness and, in at least one case, a true monster. Although Taunton did not suffer the same overcrowding and terrible living conditions as other New England asylums of the era, it did have brushes with evil that not many other places can match. Before its closure in the 1970s, staff and patients reported feeling uneasy in the lower levels of the hospital. After digging around in the hospital's records, a group of staff allegedly uncovered evidence that an inner circle of doctors and nurses were conducting experiments on patients in the basement of the hospital. Staff notes were reportedly found indicating that some patients were taken from the wards by certain doctors and not seen again. While this story has all the trappings of an urban legend, explorers of the abandoned hospital claimed to have felt an evil presence in the building. Of course, the most disturbing connection with true evil that Taunton State Hospital can claim is its most notorious resident, Jane Toppan, one of the most prolific serial killers in American history. Interviewed by police, Toppan stated that her aim was to have killed more people than any other man or woman who ever lived. Jane Toppan was born Nora Kelly in 1857. Her parents were Irish immigrants. Though Jane's mother died when she was very young, her father was an alcoholic and rumored to be insane, and local rumors even stated that his madness drove him to sew his own eyelids shut while working as a tailor. When Jane was 6 years old, her father deposited his 2 young daughters at the Boston Female Asylum orphanage and never saw them again. Eventually, Jane was placed as an indentured servant with the Toppan family in Lowell and adopted their last name as her own. In her early years, Jane was described as brilliant and terrible. She was reported to be very intelligent but unsociable and unkind. The Toppans already had a young daughter, Elizabeth, when Jane arrived in the household, who was apparently quite beautiful and kind. Many believe Jane's envy of Elizabeth first triggered her homicidal tendencies. When Jane grew up, her personality seemed to shift almost overnight. She began training as a nurse at Cambridge Hospital in 1885 and had many friends. During her time at Taunton, she was nicknamed Jolly Jane due to her perpetually cheerful and good-humored demeanor. However, the sunny disposition was hiding a horrible nature. During her time at Cambridge Hospital, Toppan started using her patients as guinea pigs, experimenting on them with morphine and atropine just to see what different doses would do to them. She would make up fake medical charts and even get into bed with her patients as they died from the drugs she had given them. Some reports stated that she derived satisfaction from feeling the life ebb from their bodies. Toppan went on to kill 31 people over her career as a hospital and private nurse. She eventually became fond of poisoning people who were not her patients, including her foster sister, Elizabeth. After a toxicology report uncovered the presence of strychnine in one of Toppan's patients, she was arrested and tried for murder in the Barnstable County Courthouse in 1902. She was committed to Taunton State Hospital, of all places, after being found not guilty by reason of insanity. Toppan stayed at Taunton for the rest of her life. Foster, Rhode Island's haunted Ramtail Factory. Paranormal researcher Thomas D'Agostino has spent 3 decades hunting the dead. He shares with In Dark Places News why an old clothing factory site in Foster is the most active place he's ever been. The Ramtail Factory site was officially listed as haunted in 1885 by the Rhode Island Census. This following the death of one of the clothing mill's owners, Peleg Walker, and the subsequent noises and eerie sightings that came after. Thomas D'Agostino believes Walker's spirit still surrounds the site because of the mystery of how he died. D'Agostino has investigated over 1,000 haunted areas in New England, but there's something about Foster's old Ramtail factory that draws him in. This area is very active. There's a lot of energy here, and it doesn't seem to be going away, he said. It's about a 5-minute walk into the woods off Ramtail Road before you reach the site of where the wool factory used to stand. In the early 1800s, this area was home to a village. Today, it's desolate. D'Agostino described one experience. I was out here with a friend of mine, and we saw a glowing form that was moving about in the trees where the factory would have been. He says Peleg Walker married into the Potter family and became a partner in the clothing factory business. When negotiations soured in 1822, Walker is said to have hung himself from the bell rope. He rang to signal a shift change. After his death, many villagers claim the bell kept ringing. The bell started ringing at midnight, and then they removed the rope after like 3 or 4 incidents. But the bell kept ringing, and they had to remove the bell altogether, he explained. D'Agostino says there are even accounts of the mill running on its own in the middle of the night. They had to come here and shut it down, and then a few nights later it was running full tilt again, but this time it was running opposite the flow of the river, he explained. D'Agostino believes he's channeled Walker using his recording device, which picks up electronic voice phenomena. He claims Walker has told him he was killed. He asks himself, did he commit suicide, or was it more foul play than that? It's a question this paranormal researcher won't put to rest.
Out of New Jersey, the Witch of Edison, the legend of Mary Moore. So this fella says, I'm a straight-up Jersey guy, born and bred in the great state of New Jersey. I've lived there all my life and will probably be here until I die. If there's one thing that I know about New Jersey, it's that it's steeped in urban legends and stories of the supernatural. Everyone has heard of the Jersey Devil. I'm going to tell you about it. The Jersey Devil is a creature with the head of a goat, the body of a deer, giant horns, and wings. It is said that the Jersey Devil was the 13th child of Mother Leeds back in 1735 and was born a demon through a curse. There have been a number of sightings of the devil since then, one of them even being reported by the brother of Napoleon, Joseph Bonaparte. In 1909, there was a string of reported sightings of and attacks by the Jersey Devil all over the state. It's been the focus of the movie Jeepers Creepers and has been explored on television shows like Paranormal State, Mysteries of the Museum, and even fictionalized on The X-Files. Knowledge of the Jersey Devil permeates the citizens of the state and has been a topic we've always been aware of. But there is a legend that predates the existence of the Jersey Devil, one that has been almost literally in my backyard for nearly my entire life, the Witch of Edison, Mary Moore. On Woodbridge Avenue in Edison, there's an old white church which sits in front of one of the oldest graveyards in New Jersey. This graveyard is the Piscataway Town Burial Ground and is the final resting place to soldiers from the Revolutionary War. The grounds were also used at one time as the training grounds for the British Army as they moved through the state. Right next to the Commons Yard was a tavern where both George Washington and Alexander Hamilton visited. This area has a deep, rich history. One of the oldest grave markers, still legible today, dates back to 1693 and lies upon a pair of brothers. The brothers died after eating poisonous mushrooms and were buried together. In 1731, a woman named Mary Moore was buried there. Mary was accused of being a witch and put to her death for her crimes. However, that may not be the full truth, as reports on her death vary greatly. One source I found online claims that she was hung, while another says she poisoned herself after she murdered her husband. Despite that, the claim that Mary Moore was a witch, that she grew strange plants in her yard, caused animals to do strange things, and even dressed as a witch, remains the same across the board. There are even some accounts that Mary Moore was the inspiration of the legend of Bloody Mary. For those who don't know what Bloody Mary is, it's basically a game of dare that young children play at sleepovers. For example, one girl stands in front of the mirror at midnight in the dark and says, "Bloody Mary" 3 times. At that point, the ghost of Mary is supposed to appear and either scare the holy mackerels out of you or rip you to shreds. Though no one is really sure what the actual source of Bloody Mary is, some people think it has to do with Queen Mary I, who was nicknamed Bloody Mary in life, while others think it has to do with a girl named Mary Worth, who was once beautiful until an accident tore her face to shreds. At that point, she vowed that no one else would be beautiful. But even with those others to consider, if you ask someone from Jersey where Bloody Mary comes from, they'll tell you Mary Moore. So, what does this have to do with anything, you ask? Well, the legend goes that the Piscataway burial ground is haunted by the ghost of Mary Moore. At night, it is told that if you walk around Mary's grave 3 times and spit, you'll come face to face with Mary's ghost. I don't necessarily believe that, being a skeptic when it comes to ghosts, but it's a fun story to tell when I only live 2 blocks away from the graveyard. Feel free to test that theory, but good luck trying to find her grave. You see, there's another story that tells about 2 boys. The details are unclear, but they stole her headstone in the 1980s. And then after stealing the headstone, one of the boys was trying to cross Route 1, a busy major highway that runs through Edison, and was killed instantly. After that, the second boy smashed the headstone, fearing that it had been cursed. Or another way the story goes is that the boy was hit by a car on his way home from stealing the headstone, and it fell into the sewer. But anyways, there's a lot of stories about this right here. Now, I'm not saying the ghost of Mary Moore will rise from the grave if you spit on the burial ground, but it is a great origin for a local urban legend. Jersey always seems to get a bad rap from people all around the country, but truth be told, it's a pretty great place, especially if you happen to be a fan of the supernatural.
Delaware is full of hauntings, from the internationally known ghosts of Fort Delaware to the creepy local legends that keep residents awake at night. One such legend is that of Maggie's Bridge on Route 78 in Seaford. As you drive on Route 78 in Seaford, near the Woodland Ferry, you'll soon come to a part of the road that twists and turns and crosses a small creek. The bridge, now covered in graffiti, is the haunted Maggie's Bridge. Legend says that over a century ago, a young pregnant woman named Maggie was traveling in a horse-drawn carriage. The horse spooked and the carriage flipped, causing Maggie to lose her head. Poor Maggie still haunts the spot where she lost her baby and lost her life, trying to find peace. If you drive onto the bridge at night and shout for Maggie, you'll often hear the sounds of a desperate woman sobbing and screaming for her lost child. This heartbreaking story and the haunting on the bridge have made this spot the most haunted road in Delaware. The haunting of Maggie's Bridge is a local legend that has creeped out residents of Seaford for centuries. Hey, you want one more? Let's do one more. Let's go to the state of Pennsylvania and our friend Stan Gordon. I know I've said this 100 times every time I mention Stan Gordon, I can't help it though. Stan is such a good guy. I really appreciate his hard work and dedication and his friendship. I've got to get Stan back on the show again, talk about his new book. This is from Stan Gordon's website, stangordon.info. Be sure to check it out. He's got tons of cool stories and investigations and stuff on there. This is from about a year ago, on February 5th, 2023, in Elk County, Pennsylvania. Stan received information that there had been a series of Bigfoot encounters that had taken place in Elk County. He had the opportunity to interview 2 witnesses who had seen the creature. One resident had been putting out scrap buckets of food, mainly apples, berries, and corn, near the woods for the wildlife to enjoy. On the evening of his encounter, he had heard the sound of heavy feet stomping in the distance. He knew it was not the sound of an elk or deer. A few minutes later, his outside security system indicated movement outside. That's when he observed an 8 to 9 feet tall creature, covered with black and gray hair. It was so tall, the head of the creature was blocked by the window he was looking from. The creature was wide-shouldered, had exceptionally long arms, and took long strides as it moved off into the woods. 2 days later, another person was in her vehicle close to where the previous sighting had taken place. It was just before noon when that person noticed a creature remarkably similar to what the first witness had reported. She also described the creature with black and gray hair, and it stood at least 8 feet tall. She said the beast took extraordinarily long strides and ran like a flash. She only saw it for several seconds as it ran down below a nearby house. She looked around, but never saw it again. She stated to Stan that she was in disbelief and was shocked by what she saw. And that's about all of the show for this week. We appreciate you listening. Thanks as always, Jimmy Haunted, Paul Chadwick, and thank you for listening. We'll see you again right here next week. God bless.